All right, so it took me about 2 hours to get up here to the Red Lake Trailhead. I'm up here finally, and it is deep in snow, so I can only go so far today. But about another mile up is where last fall I came across that tree structure. And I think that was probably the first video that I posted on here. That was just about a mile further up on this trailhead. And 6 o'clock right now, so I'm going to be trekking my way out of here when it's nice and dark. I did go up and check out the area where in my last video I heard something. I'm not exactly sure what it was. And scouted around, didn't see any footprints, didn't see anything out of the ordinary, didn't see any dead carcasses, nothing like that. So I don't know. It's easy to dismiss it. It's easy to say what it would have been, should have been, what have you, but I have no idea what it was. I think on my way back down, I'm going to go and hunker down in that area and black out and just listen. But I'm up here in this area, and it's pretty. There's nobody up here, no footprints, no snowshoes. No one's made the effort to get up in here, and I can see why, because it's hard to trek up in here. At any rate, I've been thinking on my way up here that I had a discussion earlier with a gentleman who he has had a couple of experiences over in the Schofield area. And if you're not familiar with the Schofield area, it's up Spanish Fork Canyon. You head over on US 96 and that'll take you over to Schofield area. And we were talking, and there's a lot of different scenarios for how and what these things may be. And I don't think that anybody really truly has or can key in on just one thing. They're all just hypotheses. They're all skepticism. It's all that. Everybody has their own right to take all the information and what knowledge they may have or not have about it and digest it and regurgitate it out to what makes sense to them. I think for me, what makes sense to me is that there just isn't one. And the reason why I say there isn't just one is because it just goes against the laws of how we live and where we live, that these things just don't magically appear, just as human beings don't just magically appear. There's a process, there's a birthing process, and go from a toddler to a young adulthood to adulthood and so on and so forth. And I think that same law, if you will, applies to these things. And just as there's the human race, within that human race, there's different ethnicities, cultures, and so on and so forth. And along with that, different temperaments that people have, different mental health statuses, so on and so forth. And I think that the same should or could apply to these things that are out here in the woods. I think that there's a number of different variations of what these things are. And I think that along with those variations comes different temperaments, so on and so forth. And that's why we hear so much of these people who do have these encounters. Some of them are violent. Some of them are more tame, if you will, or more of a walk-away incident where, oh, wow, that was weird, and nothing happens. You just never know what you're going to come across. And I think that the variations of these beasts, I guess that's what I'll refer them to, because I don't know what they are. Some people describe them as ape-like looking in the face, but everything else about it is humanoid, with the exception of the arms and the feet. Knee placement seems to be a lot lower on these things than a typical human being. The arms tend to be longer and surpass the kneecaps, and the shoulders and the girth and the weight and the height of these things surpasses any human being here on the planet. Now, having said that, depending on the region that you're in and the regions that we hear people having these encounters, these characteristics change. For example, some folks describe them as being more lengthy and skinny, nonetheless 7 to 8 feet tall, but still bulky as a bodybuilder, what have you. I think the different variations are dependent upon the geography or the regions that these beasts are in. If you were to take one that was up in the Pacific Northwest, obviously with the different types of weather conditions that are up there differ from those that are in the Midwest or in Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, down in those areas. And so what is being described are way different. And that's dependent upon just the geography and what fits suit for the habitat and to sustain the livelihood of these things. Some people describe these things as looking more Native American in the face. And that's always struck me as being very fascinating, because you hear that so often, that they look almost leathery in the skin, Native American-like, with a really deep brow ridge. And others will describe them as more Neanderthal look. If you could imagine what a Neanderthal would look like, that's what they describe it. But what they all have in common is that these things are running around with no clothes. They're hairy. And when I say hairy, that's a variation as well, because a lot of them are depicted with just hair moderately around their face, off their forearms, moderately kind of on their chest area, and heavily hairy on their backs, legs, and that sort of thing. Others describe them as very leather-like skin, and with the variations of skin color go from gray to Native American type color, white. White has even been described, charcoal, charcoal-like color. So all these different variations. Some of them describe the face being more ape-like versus more human-like or Neanderthal-like. Some describe them as having a conical head, more of an egg shape. Others describe them as more round. So there's different variations. People are seeing these things, and they all have what is in common, is that it's something that's not supposed to be there, that is different. It's not the human race. For whatever intent and purposes these things have here on this planet, I don't know. But I do know that they are the kings of their own domain. And I know that there's people who are having these experiences out there unwantedly. Then there's those who are out there seeking for the truth, or at least seeking for knowledge. Knowledge is everything. There's just too many accounts and experiences that people are having to just pass it off as being, well, that's just nothing. There's just too much out there to dismiss that, to put it on the back burner. And like I've said in my other videos, that there's thousands and thousands of accounts that have been brought forth to the table, but I think of all the thousands and thousands of accounts and stories that have not been and will not be brought to the table, simply for the fact that these folks just, for one, they don't even know how to really interpret what it is that they saw. How can you really explain something that you have no idea what it is? Versus those who do see something and they describe it as just being a monster or something that should not exist. So it's very interesting. There's a lot of interesting facts about this, or ideas, philosophies, a lot of hypotheses, so on and so forth. But I think that the biggest evidence out there is just witness testimony from people who are credible. And these folks have, again, nothing to gain from it. And this area here seems to be a hot spot. A lot of people have been up here. A lot of people have seen things. And that goes from tracks to tree structures to actual sightings of these beings. And who's to say? Who's to say that they're not up here? Who's to say that they're not? All I know is that I'm not going to be narrow-minded and think that we've discovered everything that there is to be discovered here on this planet. I refuse to accept that or to believe that. I believe that there's the government who wants us to think that way. I think that the government wants us to believe that these things aren't out there. I think that the government is well aware that these things are out there. For whatever reasons, they don't want to bring it forth. And not to get off on the topic of UFOs or anything, but for how many years, decades have we gone where the government has denied the existence of air phenomena that can't be explained? It's just been recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, where they've actually come out and acknowledged that there are things up there in the skies that they cannot identify. Friend or foe, I think that that's important for our national security, for our own safety and security, and yet these things are invading airspace and so on and so forth. When that thing or that topic hit, I think that more people are becoming more and more accustomed to the idea that there is life out there. And the same holds true with these things. I think that the more and more we talk about it, the more and more we see folks coming on telling about their real stories and their encounters with these things, that down the road it's going to be more and more and more accepted. And when it does hit, I think people are gonna, not have to take, such a huge step back with their jaws hitting the ground, even though that will still happen. But it's not going to become a surprise to me. It's not going to come as a surprise. I believe that there's something out there. I know that there's something out there. What it is and what its purpose is, I have no idea. But they're everywhere. They're not just here in Utah. They're not just in the Pacific Northwest. They're not just in the Sequoia National Forest in California and the Redwoods and so on and so forth, or New York. These things are in the Midwest. They're in Canada, Mexico, Central South America. They're in Russia, China, Australia. If you go back and you look at the history of each of these countries that has to deal with these things, there's something to be said about it. This isn't just an isolated incident that's going on, or phenomena that's going on here in specific states. This is happening everywhere. It's worldwide, and so I think that it's time to really take a step back and be open-minded about it. At least education and looking into it to draw some sort of better conclusion than to just dismiss it right from the get-go and say, well, that's absurd. It's that seems to be the common thing nowadays, that all that if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I'm not going to get into all that, but there's a lot of things that we haven't seen in person that, well, we believe that they do exist because we've been told that they exist, and we see pictures of it, we see videos of it, but we've never physically put our hands or our physical eyes on those things, and so we in turn just accept that that's what it is. So kind of the same goes with this. I'm gonna camp, well, not camp out here, but I'm gonna kind of hunker down up here. Sun's finally gone behind the mountains here, and I'm just gonna kind of listen, and I don't know, maybe I'll do some whoops. And like I said, I'm really fascinated about and interested in getting back down in that area that I heard that noise the other night. Maybe we'll hear it again. I don't know. I'm prepared. Got lots of lights for me tonight. So as long as it takes, we'll be up in here, and we'll just kind of go from there and see what happens. Appreciate everybody coming to the channel. Like I say, if you enjoy the videos, if you find them at all useful or informative, hit the subscribe button. It helps. It's nice to have viewers coming on here and checking things out, and know that there's a lot of people out there who want to tell their stories, who want to come forward and tell those what they've experienced. They just need a place to be able to do that. And yeah, there's a lot of other channels on here and other places on the internet that you can go to, but I think that people are afraid, and I get it. I understand it. Whether they're afraid to tell their story because of their employment, ridicule, so on and so forth. You know, I get it. And hopefully this channel will be welcoming for those who maybe have come across something or seen something that they might be able to drop something in the comment section and just share their experience, or um, you know, let us know what their experiences were, because there are experiences being had out there, and there will be many more for people to be had in the future. And like I say, I'm going to keep posting. I'm going to keep being out here in the outdoors, and keep talking to people in my when I'm out and about, and that's what I love about it. It's interesting because the more people you talk to, the more the light bulb kind of turns on, and they start thinking, and they can tell when people are sincere about the subject matter. And as of yet, a lot of people have told me encounters and stories that they've had, and these are not people who are crazy. You know, these are people that I know and are acquainted with, and I just don't find it in them to be deceitful or anything like that. There's nothing certainly to gain from it, telling their stories. So I there's a lot of people out there, and I hope that those people will, you know that there's people like me who are sincere and want to uh, bring knowledge to the table and let people know that they're not the only ones. So we'll keep on squatching, and we'll keep on being out here tonight. And who knows, maybe we'll come across something. Maybe we'll hear something and all that. But just being out here, it's wonderful. Love it. So hit that subscribe button, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Appreciate you stopping by, and best of days to you, and hope you have a great one.